So in this video, I made a list of ways that you're gonna end up in a traffic accident or in a collision. So that way, you can avoid ever having to be in another one. So by hearing my list of ways that you're gonna end up in your next traffic accident, um, will definitely lower the chances of you ever having another one. And therefore, saving you money. Keeping your insurance rates down, keeping you out of traffic school and all. Um, so, first topic I'm gonna bring up is U-turns. You're gonna get into an accident because, um, you're gonna hit somebody making a U-turn when you're making a right. So when you come up to an intersection to make a right, and you have a red light, and you stop for the cross traffic, mind that the person turning left in your cross traffic, um, that they could be making a U-turn and that they have the right of way. So you're not just watching for that traffic going left to right, as well as pedestrians. You're also having to make sure that that car in front of you turning left to go the opposite direction that you're coming from, make sure that they're not going to turn right. Or make sure that they're not going to make a U-turn. If if and if they do, more than likely they're gonna have to be in. They're gonna have to drive into the outer lane, into your lane. So that car has a right of way. In a U-turn, make sure you can complete the U-turn. You're gonna get into an accident because you're gonna get sideswiped because you tried to make a U-turn and you didn't know that the oncoming traffic was coming a lot faster. Or you didn't know that you could not complete that U-turn and that you would have to stop, put it in reverse, back up, and then put it back and drive. You thought you had enough space to complete the U-turn. Instead, you ended up having to stop. You're gonna get into an accident because you didn't realize that oncoming traffic has a very high speed limit. They're going a lot faster than you thought. You're gonna get into an accident because you're making a U-turn and you can't see the oncoming traffic. You could be on a curved road, oncoming traffic could be out of view, and you just weren't patient enough to keep driving down the road and try to make that U-turn when it's safe. You're gonna get into an accident because you're making a U-turn at an intersection and the car turning right. Um, thought that you were making a left turn. Now, if you can make that U-turn into the closer lane, into your closer lane, which you always have to do by law, um, you may be able to avoid that every time. Uh, you're gonna get into an accident because you made a U-turn and at an intersection and didn't realize that the traffic would block you inside of the intersection, um, causing you to get sideswiped by the oncoming traffic, by the cross traffic at the intersection. So in which case you need to make sure that the traffic behind you, if it looks like it could stop, not to go, just make a left turn, then make another left, then a right. uh, Now, yield signs, you have to learn what you have to remember what yield signs look like. Yield signs are just as important as stop signs. You have to know what they look like. They're an inverted. Usually, they usually look different. Typical ones are inverted triangles. They're red inverted triangles with a white inverted triangle on the inside of that, a smaller one, with the word yield on the inside of it. But any sign um, could say that says the word yield is a yield sign. Um, and then there are signs that have the yield sign, that inverted triangle, that inverted red triangle with white triangle on the side of it in the sign, but it not officially being the sign. You have to become very familiar with the yield signs. So go on the internet, look for yield signs, memorize what they look like. So when you see yield signs mean stop for the right of way traffic. They're very hard to notice. Every time you see one, you gotta memorize what it looks like. You got every time you see one, make sure you remember what it looks like because they're hard to recognize. They're like stop signs, but in reverse. You check for the right of way traffic first, then you stop if you have to. Um, you check for traffic that you will potentially hit if you enter the lane you intend to enter if you don't stop at the yield sign. So this is very important at roundabouts. Yield signs are usually present at roundabouts. So watch before you enter the roundabout. Watch for cars that are in the roundabout and that are about to enter the roundabout. 90 degrees to your left. The cross traffic coming from your left. So if a car is in the roundabout, if they are in the lane that you're going to turn into, do the timing for a proper gap, but also any cars inside of the roundabout, they could change lanes. Make sure that any car inside the roundabout don't just turn into your lane because they're in the further lane. They will change lanes while they're in the roundabout, and then you'll end up hitting that car. And then also cars coming in from cross traffic from your left, they'll be entering a roundabout really quick. Even if they're in the further lane, they could definitely turn into that right lane at a high rate of speed. Which will cause you an at-fault accident if you don't time it with the expectation that they will turn into your lane, into the right lane. Also, cars in roundabouts, just assume that they could keep circling inside of the roundabout. Don't just assume that they're gonna turn off or something. Always ignore people behind you that are honking. Um, they don't know. Um, if you ever have a clearance or not. Roundabouts are very tricky. Um, Another way you're gonna have a collision is pulling out of parking spaces. You're gonna crash into those concrete barriers if you make a habit of going straight, of pulling straight out. If there's no car in the space in front of you, those concrete barriers, a lot of times are just out of view, especially at night. Make a habit of walking around your car to see if there's a concrete barrier in front. If you're gonna go straight, um, you're gonna get into an accident backing out of a parking space. Your front corner of your car is gonna hit one of the cars to your left or right. If you make the turn too shallow, that can happen if you're just focusing, looking back to pull out of the parking space. Also, the sides of your car can hit the corner, the closer corner of one of the closer rear corner of one of the cars that you're parked in between. You're gonna hit a car that's speeding or that's passing behind you because you didn't have a view of the traffic when you were pulling out. You're gonna get into an accident. You're gonna get into a collision pulling out of a parking space because cameras, backup cameras, things in the backup cameras are closer than they appear. They come up they come up at you in the cameras very quickly. Things in the cameras come up very quickly, so you cannot depend on those cameras backing up. My suggestion is you get a rock, put it in the road, and back up using the camera to see how quickly the rock comes up under the camera so that you can see how fast something in the camera will come up. You're gonna get into a collision by the parking shades. Usually at apartment complexes they have parking shades, and those things have bars, support bars that keep them up there hanging in the air. You may not realize that there is one right next to your car. It could be on the opposite side that you got in, so you gotta look for those. You'll definitely hit those things. So you gotta look for those. Make sure that you see those before you start to pull out, because you'll just end. It means that you gotta do a straighter. You gotta pull out straighter, depending on what side it is of your vehicle. In between parking areas, pulling out of a parking area, you're gonna get into a collision with pedestrians when you pull out to make a right and or a left out of a parking area onto the main road. When you let the front of your car go over the sidewalk and somebody on their bike hits the front of your car, either because they're going really fast. It could be on a skateboard too. they're going really fast. Um, you didn't have view of them. There could be a wall there. There could be trees, and you can't see the sidewalk traffic. In that case, you pull your car over the sidewalk traffic very slowly. Make sure you pull the front of your car up to the sidewalk slowly in order to get your best view before you go. Um, if somebody on their bike hits the front of your car because you pass over the sidewalk to pull out of a parking area, or even in a crosswalk, if your car goes over at an intersection and your car goes over the crosswalk, um, if a bike hits your car and they have a green light or a white hand, you could be blamed for that accident. But this is especially take caution in where you pull out of parking areas. Sidewalk traffic always has a right of way. Don't expect them to just walk behind your car. So now we'll talk about in between parking areas. Uh, Basically, there are some intersections that are in between parking areas. Um, that have lights to allow traffic to be able to cross the main road. So when you're pulling out of a parking area and it's a stoplight, um, it's basically you're using the stoplight, then the way you're gonna get into an accident here is the traffic, the opposing traffic, the traffic that is going to the traffic from in front. You're when you're pulling out of these parking areas, at these types of intersections, we tend not to assume that the traffic in front is gonna cross, as we know at a main intersection. We think that they're just turning out of out of the parking area to get onto the main road, when in fact they could be crossing the street to go where you're coming out of. So, what you have to do is always look at the lane markings that they have and see if they couldn't potentially have a straight arrow. Also, the car, they may not even be stopped. They may be approaching, and if you have a green light, realize that the car could be going straight, so that's going to be harder to avoid. Make sure to come to a complete stop every time at parking area stop signs. Always remember, again, that bikes on sidewalks have the right of way even if you can't see them. Stop before sidewalk, then move up, even for people. Even just for foot traffic. Stop before sidewalk. And then now I'd like to talk about buses. School buses, they have stop signs. You always have to treat those stop signs on buses the same as regular stop signs. You have to come to a complete stop. That is because kids will be coming out of those buses. Um, okay, right turns. Um, as I said, bikes on bike lanes and sidewalks. It can also be skateboards, small entrances with oncoming traffic. When you turn into an entrance, when you turn off the main road to turn into a lot or an entrance, it could be a very narrow entrance. And it may not give you enough clearance to make a wide turn, into that area. You could hit the car just coming in to to pull out. So you may have to go to slow down a lot more just to make that turn. You may have to turn your wheel all the way to the right. You may have to hit the brakes and just go really slow. If you see a car and you started to make that turn, you see a car pulling out and you know you're just gonna hit it, you just hit the brakes and turn your wheel all the way to the right. But mind that they're really small entrances where just you could just hit the car coming out just because it's just such a small narrow entrance. Pedestrians and bikes, um, you're just gonna have to do your own timing. If you see a pedestrian coming up on either side, just don't be afraid. Just keep going and then come back and make the turn later. It should be easier to make a left turn. Um, and again, people making U-turns when you're making a right turn, that's always a problem. It could be in the middle of the road. It could maybe not even be in an intersection. If somebody makes a U-turn and you're coming out of an area making a right, and they're making a U-turn on the main road, if they're depending on how far to your left they are, that could be dangerous. Mind people making U-turns from the middle lane, and especially at intersections. There's a good chance that guy turning left could be making a U-turn. Always stay in the closer lane when you turn right, or if you're turning left. Always finish that turn in the closer lane. Never finish it in the outer lane. You do get ticketed for that. You'll hit people making right turn. Um, and you'll hit people making left turn if you're turning right. If you're turning right. So always make sure to stay in the closer lane. That is the law. Remember, when you're making turns, you don't have the right of way. If you're making a right turn on a green light, you do have the right of way, but not on the left turn. You have to the oncoming traffic has the right of way. You have to um yeah, you have to you only have the true right of way turning left if you have a green arrow. If you have a green light, you have to stop at that light for pedestrians and oncoming traffic. So you're making left turns. You really gotta watch out for bikes that are about to enter, that are approaching your crosswalk. That way, you gotta make sure bikes and go-pads and stuff, they could be going really fast. So you gotta do the timing. If they could enter the crosswalk, um, then um, then if you collide with the pedestrian like that, then you'll be blamed for the accident. Um, mind if they have a red hand on their crosswalk signal. If it's red, if it's white, um, then they can definitely enter the crosswalk. If it's red, they shouldn't be allowed to enter the crosswalk at that point. Um, you'll have the right of way at that point when it's red. So always look at their traffic signal. Uh, if you're turning left, traffic could abruptly stop, trapping you in the intersection, not allowing you to complete the turn. You could get sideswiped as from the oncoming traffic. So you do gotta mind also that cross traffic, if it's gonna block you in the intersection. It could be people making a right turn, making the first right turn, and just big line of people making the first right turn, just blocking you from completing that left turn. That could be it. So you gotta really be careful. Also, if the car in front of you is making a left turn, don't just follow him or her. They could end up stopping. Um, make pull out into the middle of the intersection. Make your own assumption if you could keep going. Um, Now speeding, there are speed traps. You could get pulled over in a speed trap if you're going above the speed limit. If you're gonna go above the speed limit, never go above 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. You'll end up just getting tickets if you make that a habit. Now, yellow lights. When you go through intersections, always go to speed limit because potentially, yellow lights, especially if you're going through a yellow light, they could seem to have different timings. You you want to be going the speed limit, that way you have the best braking potential. Know exactly, be very cautious when you think the light's about to turn yellow. Always go the speed limit and be ready with the brakes. Try to judge how close you have to be to the light. Try to get an assumption in your car how close you have to be to the light. In order to have a chance to just hit the brakes and stop. If you're too close, you may just want to hit the gas pedal, but you want to already know in your own car what your braking distance is, so that when you approach that yellow light, you can you can have a better decision time. Freeway traffic, freeway merging lanes. Um, you want to be going the speed limit, especially on the freeways, because there could be there's lane merging. Also on the main roads, there's lane merging. You want to have good decision timing. Um, if you got a car, if you're just blocked in, you can't make that turn. You want to be able to stop. Um, and then also, or speed up if you think you can make it. If you speed up, but you're gonna get into an accident following too closely. There's 4 second rule. Whatever speed you're going, have 4 seconds between you and the car in front of you. On 2 lane roads, one of the reasons you gotta be ready for sudden stops are the yellow lights, are the intersections. If you end up at a yellow light, you want to be going the speed limit. Be ready for the sudden stops. Another reason for sudden stops is if you're on a 2 lane road and pedestrian traffic ends up on the street, if you swerve, you could hit that oncoming car. So be going the speed limit so that way you can just hit the brakes. If somebody or something ends up on the middle of the road, um, you could end up hitting the oncoming traffic. There could be a car, um, you're, that you're gonna pass at the exact same time that you have to swerve into the oncoming lane, to avoid a person or object that ends up in your lane. So be ready. Be going the speed limit to be ready to stop. Mm. Okay, a car pulls into. Wait. Sudden stops are a car pulls into your lane. A car pulls into the middle of the intersection when you have a green light. Um, and that's forcing you to brake. Um, or forcing you to swerve and either hit oncoming traffic or the car off to your left. Um, in which case it'd be really good to have a dash cam in case the witnesses don't support your what happened, but um be ready to brake at least. Um, looking away from the road too long. Um, that could end up becoming a habit. Um, You may find yourself looking at signs, looking at things prolonged because things can happen in your head when you're driving. You know, I mean, you may end up having a goal of looking at things, looking away from the road. Um, you may make a habit of that, and that way you have to keep yourself focused. Um, and then sudden stops are, like I said, a person walking into your lane, a car pulling into your lane in front of you, just unexpectedly, yellow light, which you always want to be going the speed limit, and then changing lanes. Um, always look back, physically look back to your blind spot to see if there's a car there. There are these mirrors that are just for blind spots. They're support mirrors, but what your car comes with originally, there are special blind spot mirrors, and if you don't have that on your car, you definitely have to turn your head because you can't see if there is a car in the other lane in your blind spot without doing so. Keep doing this. Eventually, you'll actually see. I am sure you'll actually see a car in your blind spot that you could not see without turning your head and looking. I would recommend that you always turn your head even if you have a blind spot mirror. Signaling. Make sure to signal. Um, if a car behind you starts accelerating when you and won't let you make the turn, just let them pass because um, you know you don't want to hit them. Also, when you're starting a left turn into the middle lane to turn left, sometimes there are cars that will want to try to pass you, so you gotta mind the car behind you every single time. Don't be afraid to just keep going if you think you could hit them if you start to make a lane change into the middle lane. There are some mean drivers out there. They could try to pass you. They could try to turn into that middle lane to turn left, and just um, even if you're signaling that you're gonna turn left, that you're gonna turn into that middle lane. So at four-way intersections, with no stoplights, those are just the four ways that you just have the stop signs. Um, or some of them might not even have stop signs, but um, remember that the car that arrives first is how do you decide which car goes first when multiple cars arrive at an intersection with no lights? Um, that is the car that arrives first goes first rule. If two cars stop at the same time, um, it's basically the car to the right has to go first, I think. Yep. Remember that every single stop sign, every time you stop at a stop sign, make sure to visually look at the cross traffic stop signs, make sure you can see the back of their stop signs, because a lot of intersections, um, basically you stop at the stop sign, you don't realize that the cross traffic does not have to stop. So if you don't see a stop sign, if you don't see the back of a stop sign on both sides of the cross traffic, you very well could end up in a collision, in a net fault collision, because you just assumed that your cross traffic had stop signs. So every time you come up to a stop sign, always look at the cross traffic at the back of their stop sign. So become familiar with the back of stop signs, just as you would as the front of the stop sign. You get used to your own local intersections that you use every day, and don't remember to do that all the time. Crosswalks at intersections, to make things worse, if even if you see crosswalk lines on the cross traffic's roads, that doesn't mean that they have a stop sign. That doesn't mean that they have to stop. So that's why you'd never assume that they don't have to stop, that they have to stop. If you see even just one street, you don't see a stop sign, assume that they can just go. Don't be afraid to just sit there at the stop sign. Always come to a complete stop and look for all the stop signs, all the other stop signs, as I said. Think of who has the right of way. Blinking red lights when you come up to a stoplight and it's just blinking red, that treat it like a stop sign, like a stop sign. You have to stop, and then it's just like a stop sign. You have to stop and then just decide who has the right of way, and then if the cross traffic, you know, you have to decide if they're just gonna go. They could just have a green light. So treat it the same way. Look for stop signs. Look for their traffic signal. You could come up to a stop sign to make a turn onto a highway. Whenever you make a turn from a stop sign, um, mind that the cross traffic, especially if they don't have to stop, it's if you don't see a stop sign, mind that they could be going a lot faster than you realize. So you have to really think of how fast they could be going, what their speed limit is. So let's say let's say you're driving on a highway out in the country and you want to you want to turn around, you want to make a U-turn. Chances are it's going to be two lefts. So if you make a left, where you see you can make a where you can where you see you can make a U-turn, you make a left, and then you see a stop sign to make the other left, going the opposite way. That's when you don't realize that you've never made this type of turn before, that traffic is coming a lot faster, and that you won't have enough time to speed up for them to hit you. They could be going 55 to 75 miles an hour. So you definitely have to mind that speed limit that they're gonna have when you're gonna turn onto a road, when you're gonna make a turn from a stop sign. So it's not just if they have to stop. If they don't have to stop, you don't see that they have a stop sign. Think how fast are they going at all stop signs. I mean, there are intersections where basically you're just crossing one end of you're just crossing a main road or crossing onto a main road when you're coming out of a slower area like a parking area or a neighborhood. One way to avoid merging lanes is just try to stay in the outer lane. Um, and then for mergers, always remember, the 4-second rule: stay behind the traffic in front of you. Um, stay 4 seconds behind the traffic in front of you at all times, because merging lanes will definitely cause traffic to stop, and be ready to stop if you have to, if you don't see a chance to merge into the other lane. So it always helps to be going the speed limit, and to avoid those merging lanes, always stay in the outer lanes. Also, always look for the signs. They have to say if there's going to be a merger coming up. Those merger signs. Stop determine if you can continue into the break. If you do end up having to stop because you couldn't find a way in to the next lane at a merger, once you start, be careful pulling into traffic. The traffic could be going really fast. Again, you have to mind their speed limit. Also, other cars that had to stop behind you in this event, mind that they could pull out right away. They could pull out before you. So when you pull out, make sure that you just don't you just don't end up getting rear-ended by them. So if you see somebody pull out first, just stop pulling out. If you pull out at the same time, just keep going. They should have to just slow down for you. Try to make it quickly if that happens. Give them more real time to realize that the car in front of them is pulling out. Once you're coming up on a merger and you're gonna lose your lane, be ready to make a quick turn or a quick stop. Just you have to quickly decide what you're gonna do. Whenever that happens, there's no time for anger. Just the coolness about what you're gonna do. So every time you turn, always stay in the closer lane. Every time you make a turn, know that your cross traffic could be changing into your lane into your closer lane that you're gonna turn into. parking garage roundabouts go really slow because you get very limited frontal sight distance. So if a car all of a sudden stalls or stops, you're just gonna plow into them. Um, um, in parking areas, um, so basically, when you pull out of your parking spot and you're driving in the parking area, when you come to a little cross, a little four-way where basically traffic would cross, there are some kind of trick of the mind things here. You should always stop and really make a good visual and determination that there's not going to be any cross traffic because one, a car that you first looked at, your mind thought that it was parked, another parked car, when in fact um, it was coming, from your left or from your right. Also, you know, our eyes are very lazy in these intersections, in these types of cross traffic things. So what happens is, um, a lot of times what'll happen is, if you stop, you will see a car that you would have hit if you kept going that you didn't realize was coming. So just stop at these cross traffic four ways whenever you're in a parking area. Also, a car can come up from behind you. Um, they could be like parallel to you. They could be going faster than you, and they could just come up from behind you. Um, parking areas you really want to stop at the. You really gotta be moving your head and looking really hard. You gotta be going really slow, and stop at every traffic cross because it is just too tricky in those areas. You'll end up hitting a car. You have to be going slow as cars may be pulling out suddenly. You have to be ready to stop. Dark areas. It is you do gotta be very cautious about people's taillights might look like traffic lights, or lighting could be more confusing in dark areas. Um, Also, I guess that would say you want to check all the lights on your car, including your brake lights, to make sure that they all work. That way, nobody hits you because of that. Um, come to a complete stop all the time, and across intersection. Get blind spot mirrors. Another reason you could end up in a bad accident is when you turn into the middle lane. Um, Opposite traffic will turn into the middle lane as well to make a turn, to make a left. Be ready to just keep going or to stop suddenly, and if you have to stop suddenly, mind the traffic directly behind you, and also, um, just make that turn very slowly. You always have to turn into the middle lane very slowly, especially because you may have to pull right back out of the middle lane if an oncoming car is doing the same thing, and you may need your spot back, and somebody could have ended up right next to you or about to cross in front of you, and they can end up rear-ending you about to cross to your side and end up rear-ending you. So always make those turns slowly. Um, always when you're turning into the middle lane, make sure that the person behind you isn't gonna try to pass you doing the same thing. We already discussed that. Coming over large or small bumps like a freeway crossover, a bridge, a mountain, keep your eyes in front of you. You never know what could be out of sight. Um, you could come over like a bridge or an overpass, basically a road that angles up and comes back down. Um, you gotta really be looking at what what's on the other side. Could be a stop. It could be an obstruction, so you have to be going the speed limit, especially in these, and you have to keep your eyes open for when you come back down. You may not expect anything out of sight. It's like going through fog. You really have to go. Yeah, really have to be more cautious. You have to treat it like limited sight. Getting on the freeway going the wrong way. Well, that's probably because you're not focused on the signs and the lane markings. Um, look for those wrong way signs. Uh, if you have something on top of your car, unplug your garage door. Um, in snow conditions, go really slow because, if you haven't been over black ice yet, you want to be going really slow in snow conditions. Don't assume that, um, you can just go as fast as you want in the, in snow. Black ice will cause you to lose all traction on your car, especially on a motorcycle. If you're a motorcyclist and you're driving in the snow, you really don't want to hit that black ice. You want to be going really slow until you've driven over black ice. You won't be able to stay on your bike if you go over black ice. For freeway driving, I say if you have a GPS, just listen to it. Don't look at it. If it's giving you directions, you just want to listen to it tell you what lanes to be in. Just trust it on what lanes you have to be in. Um, if your windshield is not clean, um, you could really hit pedestrians, especially when you're making turns at night. Um, you could really hit pedestrians oncoming in the crosswalk that you didn't see. Because the area that they're in isn't well lit up. Okay, this next one is very complicated. So let's say you're pulling out of a parking area, and you know you have to, you need to make that turn, and you pull out, and the road um the road that you're gonna pull out onto. Obviously, we know that the closest lane is going from your left to right, and for you to make a left turn, um you gotta cross a one-way road because basically um there's a divide like a freeway, and you gotta go under a freeway um to go to the other side to make it to the other one way going from your right to left. So it's not one road, it's a divided road. Um, and there's no traffic light. And there's no stop sign for the crossing traffic. You're just pulling out of a lot, and there's a one-way, and you got to get to the other side for the other one-way going traffic going from your right to left, and you got to pull out into a middle section where there's a stop sign to turn left. The danger here is cars, traffic inside of that middle part, in between the two one-ways, with no stoplight there. That traffic, that one-way traffic coming from your left or right, this is a very dangerous left turn because if you just all of a sudden are, you pull out, what happens is you see traffic from the left is clear, you start to pull out to cross the one-way into the middle section, and all of a sudden you don't realize that you didn't compensate for the traffic that either turned that was either in front of you and crossed and ended up in that middle part at the stop sign, or traffic that from the left that made a left and turned in there, and you don't realize that you're gonna be stuck in the middle of the one-way for oncoming traffic to hit you. A really good reason to know what their speed is going to be. But this type of left turn takes another layer of realization to know that you really have to know beforehand that the amount of cars in that middle section, they're just gonna leave you stranded out there in the middle. One thing you could try to do really fast, if there's no car that pulled in to where you pulled out of, you could try reversing really quick, but you just gotta really know beforehand that the traffic in front of you will not leave you stranded in the middle of the runway. That is the one way. Another big caution is when you're driving on the freeway. When the freeway starts twisting and turning and all that, and you can't see the traffic, when you can't really see all the traffic in front of you, and the freeway starts to turn, there are, especially during rush hour traffic, you could really hit, traffic that just all of a sudden just stops. I mean, that is one reason to be going the speed limit. You could be going really fast, you could be going in the HOV lane, and you could really end up hitting traffic that just stops. You're on the freeway curves, you come out of the curve, and just right there you gotta slam on the brakes because you're looking at the tail end of a bunch of cars that are just motionless. This is very common, especially during rush hours, so you really want to be going slow. You gotta be quick with the brakes. Um, how do you know if you're on a one-way um, street? Well, you gotta look at the signs. If you come up on a street and you don't know if you could um, get on that street, um, going left or right. Let's say you got a one-way going from left to right, and you're wondering if you can turn left. Well, you just look at the signs. If it just says there should be one-way signs. Look for the signs that say one-way. Do not enter. You know, in a way to avoid going the wrong way um, on a street or on the highway. Uh, just remember you gotta be always looking at the signs. Also, one way you can get into an accident, especially with pedestrians, are missing those slow signs that say basically for you to slow down. Um, especially on two-lane roads. You know, where you just got one lane and then the other lane is opposite traffic, and then if it tells you to slow, you could and you miss a slow sign, you're going 25 miles an hour. All of a sudden, you gotta slow it down to 15. Um, and you miss that, you could end up in a collision with a pedestrian. Um, I mean, you could hit a deer, whatever. Um, especially on two lanes where there's no sidewalks. For the pedestrians, they got no choice but to walk on the road. Another thing that you gotta look out for is cars that just stall all of a sudden. A car in front of you, it could all of a sudden just stall. It could just abruptly just come to a complete stop. Um, in which case you really gotta follow the following distance rule, a 4 second rule. Just drive in traffic like the car in front of you could just stop just right away. That way, to have a following, a safe following distance instead of being too close. You're gonna crash because you end up in a construction zone, and um you just end up um you come to an intersection, and you just can't tell, um with all the barriers. You're looking ahead, you see, three different passages. At least one of them's for oncoming traffic. Um, you know, one could be for oncoming traffic to make a left. Um, the other one could just be for construction vehicles, just for construction equipment. You're not supposed to go on there. Um, So to deal with this is, just kind of go slow. Um, look at the signs. Um, just try to use common sense. I mean, if you end up going the wrong way, I mean, you just want to be going slower. If you see somebody approaching directly in front of you, you probably just want to stop because, um, if they're on the right, if they're going the right direction, then you want to close that speed, um, that combined speed, so to give you a better chance for them to stop. Um, um, one fix of that is just go on the furthest one. Um, to avoid getting in their turning lane. Um, and just do the best you can reading signs. Go as slow as you can. Um, and then in some areas, you're driving all of a sudden, near an intersection, you're just confused by the lane markings, by the street markings. You can't tell if you're in your lane or not. It could be that old lane markings are still there, not completely faded, and the new lane markings, you can't distinguish between the two for a few seconds at night or something, maybe when it's raining. This is where you just go slow, um, and just take major precaution. Maybe turn on your brights just in case you end up going the wrong way. That way you get the opposite traffic's attention. Um, and then, when this happens, just slow down, maybe hit your blinkers, and just look at the signs as hard as you can. You just step on that brake,